Dinesh, we're here in Greece doing our annual offsite. How does it feel?
Amazing. It's been such a wonderful journey for me in LogiNext, and to see a lot of people showing up in person, excited about Greece across all the different teams. It's just been amazing to meet all of them in person.
Absolutely. I think we've got people from all parts of the world right here, right? All our teams from all across, right from US all the way down to Singapore, Malaysia. We've got people flying into one location. A lot of interesting conversations, cross-team conversations, huddles, discussions, brainstorming, and of course the fantastic landscape of Greece to do all of this in. It's surreal, isn't it?
Yes, it has been. And the collaboration that I've seen across the team, sitting together, brainstorming, and getting things done together, it's just been wonderful. And of course, we are having a lot of fun, like we are at Parthenon right now.
Absolutely.
And we've been all over Santorini and all over Athens. So it's just our way of making sure that our employees feel valued.
Absolutely.
They appreciate that the company cares about them.
Right.
And that actually motivates them to do even better, even faster, and even much more innovative things.
Yeah.
And I think that has been just amazing.
Absolutely. Considering that, we're in the SaaS space, the enterprise SaaS space, which is probably one of the most happening spaces in the world right now in terms of the way the world has evolved, in terms of the way the tech space has evolved. So I think, since we're in the most hyper growth industry, if I could call it that, I think we really got to do things bigger and better, and I think Greece fits in perfectly there in terms of pulling off a vacation here. So I think we're all nicely set to have a nice little conversation here, right here at in front of the Pantheon, and I think let's talk about things that excite us as individuals and things that excite us as an organization that we're working on, and how we could help people pick some nuggets of insight from that to help them in their own individual careers and their organization's journeys as well.
And I think SaaS that you mentioned has really been a game changer in the whole technology industry. And that is what motivated me. When I was growing up in my career, I started as a software developer, did consulting, did another startup, Apple internships, all of that good stuff. But what I've seen with SaaS is it is truly path-breaking, the way in which it is able to drive the technology, the innovation, and more importantly, the business value for customers across the globe, where you can sit in any part of the corner. Like even our customer footprint spans all the way from Chile, Guatemala, North America, obviously, all the way to Southeast Asia, and all the way to Australia.
Right.
So I was joking with one
other.
of the customers the other day that we are live in every single continent except Antarctica. So maybe we start doing some penguin tracking or something of that sort, and then we would have covered pretty much every single continent in the world.
Absolutely. And I think, while we look at this as a hyper-growth industry, it comes with its own share of challenges, if I could call it that. It comes with its own share of opportunities, and it comes with its own ask in terms of the kind of mindset you need, the kind of skill sets you need, and the kind of cultures you need to really build great organizations and great products that can add value to organizations that use them, right?
Yes, and if you take that into the customer context, one of the brilliant things that we have done is institutionalized a whole DIY mindset with customers. Yeah. Even though they're enterprises, the philosophies of SaaS do not really change because we want everyone to be self-sufficient. And again, coming from a consulting background, I've been used to those scenarios where enterprises would have armies and armies of people supporting them, which was more of a workforce injection of sorts. But what SaaS has done has truly changed the ballgame, where every person is empowered in an easy-to-use, simplistic manner, whether it is logistics, health tech, fintech, whatever it might be. The whole SaaS model really lends itself to self-service kind of capabilities, where everything from settings to configurations to day-to-day operations is all being managed by themselves independently, and that automatically has a great impact so that our customer service teams, our account management teams are more focused on value creation as opposed to day-to-day grunt work that they need.
Yeah, that's a great point you make about DIY, right? Do it yourself. Because I think that whole DIY paradigm is a journey in itself, as we see it with most of our clients as well, right? Because you start off at a certain point and you kind of graduate them to a point where they actually go on a full self-service model, right? And that entire journey from starting off with the basic understanding of the product and the basic understanding of the configurations, and then working with our teams to get to a point where they are in full control of our product, and they, as we call them, champions of our product in their organizations, right? That journey is really, I would say it's a nice blend of challenges, small victories, small defeats, small accomplishments, and then eventually all of those little things add up to help us get them there. And I think that's usually our end game in most of our clients.
Definitely, right? And that change management aspect that you mentioned, right? That mentality shift that needs to happen from having people do things for you versus doing things yourself, it takes a little bit of growing pains, I would say. So one of the examples I remember, one of our customers, a global parcel delivery company, who has been used to that kind of a mindset. I can't name names, but they're usually brown in color, if you know what I mean. Right. When I had a discussion with them, they said that, okay, how many people are going to be here to help us do the implementation? And I said, no, it's all going to be your team. Your IT teams and your operations teams are going to be the champions. They will be learning things. We will be there with them every step of the way, but we need them to be hands-on and do things. And that actually was an interesting discussion with the VP of operations, where he was not used to that kind of a model. And when I did a quick back of the envelope kind of a math, I said that, okay, having been in those kind of industries, service-based industries before, I said, here is what you'll be paying and here is what the rates would be. And if you add all of that up, you're ending up paying for people much more than you're paying for the software. And then there was that moment of truth, moment of realization where it took some getting used to, but eventually that customer has been with us for more than 4 years now, has been scaling globally, and it's just been an amazing journey.
Yeah, and if we just bring the whole DIY aspect and the customer onboarding journey together, this whole challenge of driving that change in mindsets, right? When you talk about change management, I think you're referring largely to the change in mindset that people need to go through in terms of coming from a services-based expectations to fully realizing the value of a product-based engagement and to fully take control of running the product themselves, right? And again, this manifests differently for different stakeholders within the client organization as well, right? And that journey of navigating through these different stakeholders, setting the right expectations, helping them understand the product, helping them get through that entire onboarding journey to get them to where we need to get them to. I think that process, if we were to sort of break it down, how does that really, position itself from a process perspective at our end, right? Because we've got teams that are skilled in various areas. How do we deploy those skill sets to drive that entire mindset change through this whole onboarding process?
Yeah, if you talk about total cost of ownership with the rank and file members, you would have already lost the battle. If you say that, okay, we are going to help you reduce your total cost of ownership by doing this DIY model, it's not going to fly. So from a change management standpoint and changing the mindset standpoint, you need to identify those champions. They might be even at an analyst level, someone who is hungry to learn, to grow, or they might even sometimes be a vice president level kind of a person who are very hands-on and who want to get things done by themselves. So one of the things that has worked well in our space has primarily been identifying those champions. And these champions might not be the most vocal people, but you will see that in terms of their ability to understand and comprehend what you're saying, their ability to get things done. And then you nurture those champions to be the change makers within client organizations. Sure. Because as an external third party, there's only so much influence that you can have on every single member. But when you have those champions in the technology teams, in the operations teams, or even in the leadership, those are the ones who are going to drive that thought process mindset, and they will be the examples that you share with the leadership, saying that if these folks can do it, why not everybody else? And then automatically creates a snowball kind of an effect. Right. And then you have customers who are running entire countries' operations by themselves. Absolutely. Without a single person being there, supporting them or sitting with them day in, day out and charging money.
Absolutely. So if we just talk a little more around this whole onboarding process, right? right from setting the right expectations to doing this knowledge transfer to also, I think it all boils down to giving them the clarity, right? Like, look, this is going to make your life easier, right? This is going to make your life better so that you focus on bigger, better tasks, and the product takes care of the more structured and the more logical parts of your work, right? So I think giving them that sense of empowerment, making them realize that, look, you know what, once I adopt the product, my life's going to get better as a operations manager or as a VP of operations or even as a CEO, because a lot of my operations are going to get more efficient. A lot of my operations are going to get more visible. I'm going to be able to make better strategies for scaling my business. So it's really going to help them in multiple ways. But I think for us and our teams, I think it's really about moving the needle on clarity and helping them see the bigger picture and helping them see the fact that, you know what, this thing's going to really change my life for the better. I think once they buy into that, they're probably going to, start moving towards, aligning with us and move towards the DIY process.
You pretty much hit the nail on the head when you mentioned the golden word, onboarding. Yeah. Now, of course, every SaaS company does it differently, and there are different models. There are sometimes even self-learning based onboarding mechanisms. But I think the onboarding, which is your first few touch points that you're having with your customer, pretty much sets the guardrails of what is acceptable and what is not, what is possible, what is not. And when you educate the customer from the first day that, okay, this is what this whole engagement is going to be about, because a lot of people that you will be interacting with this might be the first time that they're even seeing the platform. Because more often than not, the buying decisions are done by separate teams, procurement, leadership, and so on. And the project teams are completely new, where they stand up a new project team who will be responsible for the implementation and the success of the project. So in those kind of scenarios, the onboarding program, the initial set of things that you share with them, whether it is about how you manage ticket resolutions, how you manage the overall implementation, the settings, configurations, what is your overall timeline going to look like? Once you set the ground on that, and that becomes extremely key. So for anyone who's thinking about either scaling their SaaS company or who already has a SaaS company or trying to get into building a SaaS company, I would highly recommend that they focus on creating a very seamless onboarding experience, right from account access all the way through the guided process of getting themselves set up. Right. Because if you do that well and you do that effectively, that is going to have many times the multiples in terms of the value that not just you get from a subscription license transaction basis, but also what the customer gets.
That you have a smooth customer life cycle on our platform to ensure that they're able to get in, they're able to understand the configurations, they're able to understand the power the product brings to their business, and then work with us to get to a point where they start taking ownership of the product, right? And we really want to accelerate that, but you want to do it in the right way as well. So what are some of the ideas or areas that we could focus on in actually creating a playbook for efficient onboarding for every customer? I think that's going to help every other enterprise SaaS company out there to sort of draw a thing or two from.
Definitely. And I think it will vary from SaaS company to SaaS company. So if you're a B2C kind of SaaS company, the journey that you're taking is more of a self-service kind of a model. If you are a B2B kind of an enterprise-grade SaaS company, there will definitely be some human intervention, which is where your account management team or a customer success management team would be the ones driving the agenda. But in all of those kind of models, the underlying fact remains that the sooner you can start showing the value to the customer, the better it is. So I would recommend do not focus on getting everything up and running, because more often than not, everyone doesn't need everything up and running. Get the bare minimums done so that your product can actually start performing, the analytics start showing up, and you can start showcasing the value of your product, and then layer in the complexities on top of them slowly and steadily. Because sometimes people get overwhelmed with every single thing that your platform might have to offer. It might not be necessary for a day one go live kind of an activity. So focus on what is the minimum viable product, like we say in the technology side, even in the SaaS implementation, what is your minimum viable product that you need to get launched on the ground Focus on that, focus all the teams' efforts around it, not just your own, but also the customers' teams. Get to that stage, get the value creation going, and then start layering additional features, functionality, capabilities. So as a technology company, you obviously are always proud of showing every single bells and whistles that you have to the customer, and you want them to start adopting it. The time for that will come later in your weekly reviews, in your monthly business reviews. Those are the times where you can start layering additional capabilities, but initially focus on getting to the value part, and then you can start adding the more supplementary, secondary and tertiary kind of benefits, and that is how you will keep the subscription running in perpetuity.
Absolutely, and I think I want to just add a little more to that. This whole process of arriving at the MVP, whether it is in terms of the kind of integrations you're going to do with external systems, whether it is the kind of configurations that you're going to go live with, or whether it's also the kind of business lines that are going to get onboarded onto the platform at the beginning. I think that definition of MVP needs to be a very collaborative one, right? You really have to get the client involved in it. You really have to show them the whole idea. You really have to break it down into certain very specific steps that they got to follow, and then put that MVP structure together, and that becomes your goalpost for the first go live, as we call it, right? Because once that magical go live happens, you really have a lot of confidence on both sides, right? And then, like you said, you start layering up. You add more business units, you add more configurations, you do more integrations with external platforms, software, whatever is a part of your ecosystem. But I think getting them off the ground, getting them to that first go live with that collaborative MVP expectation is really one of the cornerstones of growing an account and setting a good bedrock for the subsequent activities to follow, right?
100%. And I'll give you an example. This was in the early days, I would say, one of our initial customers, where we had gotten the IT team, the operations team, everyone aligned, everything was ready, the integrations, everything was up and running. We were pretty much ready for the launch. And we had this go, no go kind of a meeting with the CEO, the COO, the CFO, the VP of operations was also there, VP of technology was also there, along with the CIO. And this was a roundtable, and they obviously invited me as well to represent LogiNext, because it was a massive LogiNext implementation for a food delivery use case that we were solving for them. Everyone was pretty much confident that, okay, we have everything nailed down. It's going to be a go decision, and we're going to be launching with 20 restaurants in the next week. At that time, the VP of Finance raises this concern that the reporting does not have some metrics. And of course, when we say the customers have to be hands-on, we are also hands-on. So I immediately get into the product, and I'm looking at their account, and I'm saying that, okay, the reports are not showing the cash calculations because the data was never being sent to us in the first place. And then when you go back, you realize that during the integration discussions, no one involved the finance team in those discussions. So they couldn't possibly go live with the restaurants because there was a lot of financial reconciliation that they had to do, and only then they can close the books. And that delayed the go live, thankfully only by a week, because it was a relatively straightforward change. But that really is something that I hold true, and I tell everyone in my team that you need to make sure that you involve as many stakeholders as possible. You might not think that legal has a role to play, but there might be some driver compliance related issues where you need them to sign on the dotted line that they are open for tracking. It could be anything that you can think of. You need to be prepared.
So yeah, it's really important for people to be passionate about their product, to really know their product, so that they can translate that knowledge, that awareness, that passion onto customers, which eventually ends up evangelizing the adoption and everything else. So yeah, I'm fully aligned with how you need to really know the product well enough to handle these complex scenarios that might crop up.
And especially as the startup scales, this is something, and this is where I'm going to break the fourth wall, and I'm going to talk directly to the people. When you're hiring for additional folks, whether it's at a leadership level, always make sure that you are getting them to be hands-on in your product. Because you as a founder, as one of the early employee, obviously will be very hands-on, and you will have a passion for the product. You have to make sure, especially for SaaS products, that passion translates into every single person.
Absolutely.
Because to take an example, in my role as a VP of account management, Dhaval, and I'm sure you have had those kind of multiple scenarios, my meetings might either be something related to a leadership discussion for an upsell opportunity where they want to know about new capabilities, or in other cases, there might be about some issues that they might be facing, which gets escalated to my level that needs immediate attention. Without being hands-on on the product, there is no way the customers will ever respect you. Absolutely. If you go into a meeting and say that I will have my team look into it, or someone, I'll have to get back to you, you've already lost the battle. They've already made an impression of you that you are not really the right person. And that is where it's been so many times, and the leadership level folks might have not even seen your product. So what we do in some of our quarterly business reviews, even with the CXOs, we start off with the product and the analytics that's there directly in the product, and show them a view of how their own company's operations are running across all multiple different countries or running across multiple different hubs and locations. And then we pivot into more of the strategic thinking, because that way you've created a hook for the people, you've created a hook for the leadership, and the more you understand their business and your own product, you will be much better positioned to scale and grow with them.
Absolutely. And on that note, let's segue into some of the real challenges that we see on a regular basis, right? Because it's not all hunky-dory stuff, right? It's probably less hunky-dory and more challenges than one can imagine. And I think somewhere it ties down to how we build the right mindsets to navigate these challenges as a part of what you do, right? And develop a taste for these challenges so that you're able to thrive on them, and you're able to drive the necessary engagement that you need to drive with the customer, and you're able to get them to the other side where they see light at the end of the tunnel, which obviously puts the entire challenging process into perspective. And I think that's one of the great things about our jobs, where you get to really take the client through that entire process, deal with every single challenge that comes our way, and then once you're on the other side, the glory that you see in terms of the respect the client has for us, and the kind of when you go and meet them, right, we see the kind of welcome we get from them, the kind of conversations they engage us on. And you were referring to one of the client meetings where they involved you. They get us involved in their strategy conversations. They really respect the fact that we collaborated with them, we endured the entire onboarding process. We worked with them to help them get clarity. We worked with our teams to get things together, and eventually we were able to get on the other side. But that whole process of managing complex, tricky clients, or managing complex, tricky situations, which could sometimes be because of adoption level challenges, product fit level challenges, or even stakeholder level challenges, and eventually maybe even expectations related challenges. So do you have an example or some such scenario where there are certain ideas that you could discuss in terms of how we've dealt with this?
Sure. And I think that you touch upon a really important subject, because when a company, an enterprise company especially, buys a product, there is obviously due diligence and all that they do, but in addition there is also assumptions that they make of a platform. They assume that I have a problem X and you have capability A, B, and C.
Right.
Yeah, B will be able to solve it.
Correct.
And those assumptions are what end up killing you, which leads to turbulence, as we call it in accounts, primarily because the client then feels that, no, your sales guy should have done a better job. But the problem is, when different people, it's like blind men touching an elephant at different parts and trying to figure things out, right? It's that kind of a thing, because there's silos of information that IT has, that operations team have, finance has, and even the vendor teams have. In those kind of scenarios, you will not be able to solve all of them. But what is extremely important for account management teams to remember is to be empathetic towards customers. And I know there is enough buzz around empathy and all of those, but what I mean by that is being there with your customer, hearing them out. You might not be able to solve all of their challenges, trying to think from their perspective on what kind of issues they're facing, whether it's a delay in go live, which means additional spend on their part, or maybe they'll have to hire additional teams in order to get things done. When you hear them out, it helps you to understand where they're coming from and then fight those battles accordingly, because there's not going to be everything that you'll be able to solve. Because when you deal into legal issues or commercial issues or financial related issues, there's only so much that any corporation can do. But the more you listen to them, the more you hear them, and the more creative ideas that you always present. And that's what I tell my team. If a customer comes to you with a problem, do not say that we don't do this. say that, okay, right now we don't have this out of the box. Let's think about, is there another way to solve it? Maybe some other feature, some other functionality, and also question whether the problem statement itself is even a real problem anymore. Because a lot of times customers come from a legacy mindset of using a different kind of a platform. They don't understand that when you move to new technology, a cutting edge technology, some of those problems will not even manifest themselves.
Right, and I think it's also SaaS by design. You know, when you subscribe to a product, you're not, and you've got 10 problems, you're always going to be you're always going to be on a 6 or a 7 on 10 by design, right? And I think those 3 areas that you don't find a perfect fit for are necessarily the areas which are going to contribute to a lot of conversations around how the product can help them better and so on. And I think that's where we got to really focus on what's really important versus what's nice to have. And again, in what's nice to have, you could have a certain aspect of your product. You could take feedback from the client and add a certain feature on your roadmap, and then see if there are more clients who are asking for the same feature, and then you can bring it into the roadmap and get the product to become stronger over time. And that's also a part of the product evolution journey. But I think at any given point in time, SaaS by design is never going to give you a 100% fit. And I think that's right back into, that ties back right into the whole clarity conversation that we had around expectation setting, right? We got to make the client see the value in what we're talking about. And the more we focus on the 7 on 10 things that are creating value for them and get them to understand those 3 things which are currently deviating from their expectations, so to speak, and then sort of helping them align on those and then finding ways to address those through various other approaches and over a period of time and so on. I think that allows us to build that confidence on the client side, as well as drive adoption, onboarding, the whole MVP go live scenario that we spoke about. But that's really what the crux of the matter is in terms of helping them see things the way we want them to, and helping them see things in the right way. And I think that's one of the key aspects that people could take away from this. So I think it's great to have this conversation, Dinesh, and we could probably go on and on, but I guess that's the time that we have for today for this conversation. It's again great to be doing this right here, the center of Greece at Athens, in this fantastic setup, and super excited and looking forward to the journey ahead. And thanks for having this chat here.
Thank you for having me, Dhaval. It was a wonderful conversation in a place that can't be more beautiful than this.
Thanks, Dinesh. Thanks, man. Thank you. Bye-bye.